Great.
I would like to call the Policy Committee of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Monday, February 9th, 2026. We are meeting in an online format. My name is Maya Lena, and I am the chair of the Policy Committee. Tonight we have with us Vice Chair of the Board and District 1 Representative Mickey Bondo, District 2 Representative Ali Ali, and At-Large Representative Yusra Ali. And we also have with us Chief of Strategy and Operations, Dr. Sarah Warren.
And I
Tonight, oh,
just brought over Chair Lentz.
oh, great.
Should be
And Board Chair Sarah Lentz will be joining us momentarily here. Um, there she is.
there she is. Okay.
Great.
Great.
Tonight, our agenda for the policy committee is just the draft calendar for the 2026-2027 academic year. That presentation will be led by Dr. Warren. First, I would like to see if there's any public comment. Oh, and if you would like to give public comment, you can raise your Zoom hand. Okay, I don't see any public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and Dr. Warren, take it away.
Great. Good evening, everybody. So our goal tonight is really just to talk through the draft of the calendar for school year 26-27, hard to believe. And I will start out by just sharing a brief presentation, which I hope will just help in the framing so that people have a sense of how this gets developed and why we do it the way we do. And then we'll have an opportunity to actually look at the draft calendar and walk through it a little bit and get to any questions and thoughts people have. So always like I'm a new user of. Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Great. All right, so I'll walk us through our own policy requirements, the state legal requirements, a little bit about what's in the collective bargaining agreements related to calendar, and then other considerations, as well as a few of the key themes I pulled out of the responses to the survey that I sent out to all staff about the calendar, and then some of the key decision points and next steps for the committee and me. Okay, so this is work that's governed by Board Policy ICA school year. And what you see on the screen in front of you is the entirety of the policy. It's very brief and simple. And it basically just says that we need to create a calendar each year and we need to do it by April, and that we have to abide by state law in terms of the number of school days. And you'll see it not only notes school days, but also distinguishing storm days and teacher work days. So the state law defines what a school year looks like in terms of number of days and what counts as instructional days. And so the current requirement, and has been for quite some time, I believe, under state law, is 175 instructional days and 180 days total. So 5 of those days, that's a minimum, 5 of those days can be used for other types of events, including teacher workshops, administrative meetings, parent-teacher conferences, etc. The instructional day is at least 3 hours long. And then you can see we also have over time, an average of 5 hours of instructional time over any 2-week period. So there's sort of a daily requirement and then a 2-week requirement. And the other thing that we have to be very mindful of as we're building our calendar, and we do a lot of consultation around it with help from Kevin Stilfen, the director of our CTE program, or career and technical education, is that because we are the regional hub for career and technical education, we have to work closely with the sending schools to paths to make sure that we're aligning as closely as we can across our district calendars. So what the state says is that no more than 5 instructional days may be included on which all individual units or school districts are not aligned. What it really means is if we're out of school as Portland, that's not really a problem. But if we are in school and other districts are not, so if we have students at paths, but other districts are not sending students, that's an issue. And they're not supposed to be any more than 5 days when that occurs. If we can't reach full alignment and get to that 5 days or less rule, then we have to submit a waiver request to the state. We did actually submit a waiver request for this year, and we received approval. We currently, in terms of the current version of the calendar, I believe we're at 7 dissimilar days. And if that continues to hold, then we will need to submit a waiver request again. But a few days ago, we were at 10 days. So we've done some work together across the districts to get down to 7, which we feel is more reasonable potentially to send to the state. And then one of the other things we look at is our contracts, and in particular, because our policy requires us to include teacher days, the PEA contract or collective bargaining agreement is especially important. So you can see the specific language that I pulled out of the contract here. The requirement in the contract is for up to 183 days, and that includes 181 days of actual instructional time or PD time, and then the other 2 days of those 183 are set aside for teacher work on parent-teacher conferences. And then the other thing that the contract is clear about is that one of those first 4 work days and the last day are for the teachers themselves. So those are set aside for the teachers to do what they need to do and can't be taken up by district or school professional development or other activities. And then just to note that the EdTech agreement also specifies days. And actually, as you see in the first clause here, the first bullet, the number of days actually went up or has been going up. And so effective 2023-24, there are 5 days. So effectively, the teacher contract has 6 above and beyond. So the 175 instructional days plus 6 more gets you to the 181 in the teacher contract. And then they've got 2 more that are for conferences. For the ed techs, it's 5. So 175 instructional days for students, and then 5 more for ed tech professional development and preparation. We are not quite at a point in determining which days should be dedicated for the ed techs. This year, we had them start the first week, and teachers had 4 days before students came. Ed techs had 3. There was a little bit of confusion around that. And when we got to the mid-year all district PD day, there was confusion as to whether ed techs were taking part in that or not. So we just want to make sure that before we commit, that we've fully talked this all through with our ed tech partners and the union and come to agreement. But the choices would seem to be that either they have 3 days of preparation and PD time prior to the start of the year, the 1 day in the middle of the year, which you'll see in the calendar is currently slated to be in March, and then a day after the last student day. Or they could potentially, I'm hearing from the union president that they would really like to align the full 4 days that the teachers are in prior to students arriving. So that would be 4 of their 5 days already used up. And we really want them to be at that mid-year professional development day. And so if we did that, it would mean that they would not have another day at the end of the year after students are done. So we are going to continue to talk that through. The ed techs don't necessarily have to be called out in the calendar that's approved by the committee or the board. And so for the time being right now, I have removed any reference to ed techs in the draft calendar. It just references teachers. And then some of the other things, I mean, there are many different considerations, and this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the ones that have gone into trying to shape the calendar, um, trying not to start too early. People are sensitive, understandably, about coming back during the summer, but there's some of that we can't fully avoid, or we would end up starting school so late that we either have to cut out a vacation or run really late into the following June. So trying to balance that in sort of late August, early September. We're trying really hard to end before Juneteenth of 2027, if at all possible. We have incorporated 3 snow days again. An earlier draft of the calendar that I had posted included 4 snow days. Um, and a lot of the feedback that we got through the staff survey was some pushback on that and people wanting us to stick to the 3. The current way that we are sort of running snow days is that we have 3 traditional snow days, and then after that we move to remote learning days. And that's actually this year where we are at now. We have used up our 3 days, and any further inclement weather days would end up having to be remote learning days. We're we struggle with that a little bit, honestly, because we know that remote learning is not what is best for our students. And it is especially not best for students who have been historically marginalized in various ways. But we're also trying to balance how many extra days we tack on to the end of the year. And so remote learning does give us that flexibility not to keep adding more snow days at the end of the year. We have been sure to preserve the Yom Kippur and Eid holidays that we added in this last calendar cycle, in addition to the state's required holidays. So the state's holidays are not ones that we can um, choose to get rid of, but we have added these 2 in recognition of the rich diversity of our community. We have maintained the winter break around end of December, early January, the February break, and the April break. And we have also worked to preserve the 1 full day of district-wide professional development in March. I believe the first time ever, certainly the first time since I've been here, we put out a staff survey just to get some general input from people on what they liked about the draft as it was about a week ago. And then what did people like, or maybe it's a little longer than that now. What did people like and want us to maintain, and what were things that people wished we would change? So it was a very open-ended type of survey, not terribly scientific, but it did give us some sense of what people were thinking. A number of people expressed appreciation for that diversification of religious holidays. And so, as I just mentioned, we've continued and saved those in next year's proposed calendar. A lot of people wanting to make sure that we finish as early as possible in the summer, preferably before Juneteenth. The current version of the calendar that we're about to look at does that. A lot of people really loved, have to say, I'm with people on this, really appreciated having a full 2 weeks off at the winter break this year. That's a tough one. It's not something that any of the other districts that we collaborate with, or any other district I'm aware of, is going to be able to do again in the coming year. Um, to do that, it's not that it's impossible. It just means that we would have to find 2 more days, the Monday and Tuesday. I think it's the 21st and 2nd of December. We would have to find 2 student days, some other place in the calendar to make up for that, if we were going to try to stretch that break to be a 2 full weeks off. And then again, I mentioned before, a number of people didn't like that we were trying to go back to 4 snow days before moving to remote learning. I should note that um, I don't know when exactly it shifted over, but it used to be that we actually had 5 snow days um, before we moved into another, option. But 3 snow days is what we're currently working with, and so we've sustained that and kind of maintained the status quo in the latest draft of the calendar. Some people in the survey said they feel like August 24th feels too early for teachers to start. It's actually not that different from this year. I do think there's a little bit of an optical illusion that happens when you look at the calendar and see where Labor Day falls. It just makes everything look very strange and wonky. But August 24th is really only a day different from where we started during this school year. Um, that said, we can and should look at that week and have a conversation around whether folks would like to start the school year on for teachers on that Monday. It's possible we could shift it to Tuesday. Um, and then a lot of people don't like starting before Labor Day. I think a lot of people probably would agree with that. The problem is that Labor Day happened on September 2nd this year, whereas next year it happens on September 7th. And so again, the student day, first day, doesn't actually end up being all that different next year from how it is this year, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast with the way that Labor Day lands. And our start date is consistent with what other districts are proposing as well. So it's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. And then what I would suggest, I mean, the committee could, dig in and discuss or propose changes to any aspect of the calendar. But there are a couple of things that I think would probably be especially valuable for people to think through and discuss here. One is the teacher start date, so whether to start on that Monday or Tuesday, the 24th or 25th of August. If we were to shift from the Monday to the Tuesday, then we would need to turn that Friday, 8/28, into a work day. It's currently slated to be a day off. And the thinking was that teachers might like to have a 3-day weekend before the students return, but it could equally be that people think it's actually better to give them a little more time on the front end and not come back until the 25th. And so we can look at that when I pull up the calendar. And then the Friday 9/4 is we've gone back and forth on that one a little bit, and ultimately a few days ago, we were originally scheduling it to be a student day. At this stage, we have taken it away and turned that into a day off. And our goal there was partly just to align with our PATHS partner districts because most of the districts around us were taking that as a day off prior to the Labor Day weekend. And I think there's some degree of tradition around that here that people treat that as a 4-day weekend. But if folks don't like that idea and would rather that students have a full week that week, we could turn that back into um, a student day and a school day, and then we would need to find a day off elsewhere in the calendar. One way to do that would be to go back to having a Friday before spring break off, which is something that some people really like. And once we've gotten through this conversation tonight, there will be further engagement with our collective bargaining partners, the path sending districts if needed. And then, depending on where we land, we might want to send another couple of specific questions out to staff to get input. Um, or maybe we just do that conversation with our collective bargaining, presidents. And then after we're relatively clear on where we're heading with this year's calendar, I'm also going to draft a new calendar for the 27-28 school year. Ryan has encouraged us to try to do 2 years at once, and I think it's a great idea. It would certainly help create a little more clarity. and vision for folks into the future so that they can make plans, both families and staff. And so that is what we're going to put forward to the committee and the board, and the board can choose whether or not to approve two at once, but we will at least work on developing that. And then the other thing that's come up in recent months is just some questions around seemingly different practices that have been occurring at different schools or with different staff over time with regard to the use of leave for holidays that are not recognized in our calendar. Some people apparently have been asked to take personal leave for those days, whereas others have not. It's just been sort of off the books, seemingly. So, one of the things we do need to do is just make sure that we get some clarity in our policy around how we handle that leave time. It's not specifically addressed in our contracts. So let me pause there before I actually go into the calendar itself and just see if there were questions about the framing.
I do have some questions, but I'll see if anyone from the committee has any first or Chair Lynns. Yes, Vice Chair Bondo.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I have a question, just a clarification question on the slide number 2. I just wonder about the why we have to ask for waivers. And I think that's what I need to understand is because of, do we have some consequences if we go over, or we have to pay some fees? So I just try to understand why we have to ask a waiver to the DO, I think that's the Department of Education, or what's the reason? Because we have to pay some fees because we are different than other private school or districts. So I just want to understand the slide number 2. I think the
Sure.
second paragraph. Thank you.
Yeah, so that is specific to the regional consortia that work together as career and technical education hubs. So, our Portland Arts and Technical High School, so our PATHS program is they we serve as the hub for several other schools in the area. And
Okay.
because of that, and this is true of any CTE sort of region in the state, the mandate from the state is to come together across those school districts and collaborate to try to align district calendars as much as possible so that when students are coming to paths or going to another technical school somewhere else in the state, that the calendars are as closely aligned as possible. So, for example, if paths is open and let's say Falmouth is closed, then that means that those Falmouth students are missing their time at paths. And so the
Yes.
effort to align is to try to avoid students missing instruction at the CTE program.
Okay.
It's not a reasonable expectation, I think they've realized, to get us to fully align our calendars across all these districts. So I don't know why they set 5 as the goal, but 5 is what they have set as the number of days that we're supposed to be similar, and more than that is supposed to require a waiver. So basically, we have to put in a justification to the state for why we couldn't get down to 5, and then they review that and they either come back and push back on us or they approve the waiver.
Okay.
And I think, we have made a good faith effort. We've had more than one call, but I was just on one the other day with all of the sending districts. And like I said before, we were at 10 days of dissimilar days when we started the call. And after kind of, working together collaboratively, we were able to identify some ways to get down to 7 dissimilar days, which is where it stands right now. And, part of the challenge is that as school districts, we're very different districts in size and location and culture and, student populations. We're the only ones right now that are recognizing Yom Kippur and Eid of that group of school districts.
Mhm.
And so it's not that those 2 days make us dissimilar, because actually, when we're out of school, that doesn't count. But it does mean that we have other days when we have to be in school, and so it kind of increases the odds of us having dissimilar days. So it's very complicated. I can't say I even ever fully understood it until recently. But yeah, it's just one of the kind of quirky parts of being the part of that career and technical education hub.
So what we have done so far? So we have how many waivers we have done so far on those couple of years? We that's gonna be those are gonna be the requirement for the future, or we have already done some of the request for waiver from the past. So
We
we learned.
received we received one for this year,
Mhm.
and we would need to submit a new one for the coming year. I think the deadline is June 1st or something like that, it's sometime in
Oh,
June.
okay. All right. Thank you,
Mhm.
Sarah. Mm.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a few questions, Dr. Warren. Can you talk about what some of the other dissimilar days are and where those are coming from? Like what are examples that other districts are using or taking days off that we don't have off?
I mean, there are a bunch of them, but one of them is a lot of the districts still take that Friday before the April break off, and we had taken that out to make room for other things. So that is one day where we're dissimilar. Um, and by the way, this is like, it's not like we're one way and then all the other districts are aligned. There are misalignments all over the place, right? So different districts have their own schedules for various reasons. Some of them have more professional development days for teachers, where students are not at school. And so those become misaligned days. Uh, let's see, we initially were not aligned around September 4th, the day before Labor Day weekend, but now we're aligned because we decided to take it off. Um, Generally speaking, we're aligned around the holidays, or sorry, the vacation periods. Um, the break, so the December break, there are some schools that are going to school on the 23rd and others that are not. Um, so yeah, those are generally, and then, the two holidays that we have added to our calendar, the other districts have not.
Okay,
So that's generally speaking.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned August 28th as being a potential day off for staff. Is that something that staff has put forth as a preference that they have, or like they would prefer to have it, or you're not quite sure yet?
Sort of, I think I didn't ask that as a specific question. I just more asked for general feedback. And I think there was sort of I would say mixed feelings about that first week without asking a specific question on it. So that is one of the things that I think, if we were going to do another survey, or at the very least in our conversations with our union partners, that we would want to delve into a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that might actually be a little easier to see if I share. Let me just share the actual calendars. It might make sense to folks a little bit more. So we're talking about, let's go back to the beginning, August. So right now, the way it's structured is there would be 4 teacher days, Monday to Thursday, and then people would have Friday off. But another way to do that would be to have people start on Tuesday. So not work on Monday, start on Tuesday, and then work through Friday. And then the proposal is for students to start on Monday.
Okay.
And the thing is that when Labor Day falls earlier in the school year, it's just sort of has been this tradition, I think, that people take the Friday off before Labor Day. And so teachers would be working, for 4 days, and then they would get the Friday off, and then students come back after Labor Day. So there's sort of a natural 4 day holiday break in there. But because Labor Day is starting late or is happening late this next time, it sort of throws all of that off a little bit.
Yeah.
But it also means we could, have some choice in terms of which day is which structure is better for people.
Got it. Great. That's very helpful. Those were my questions. Any other committee members with questions? Great.
I just I just
Oh,
have a quick question, sorry. Um, if the changes to when school starts in relation to Labor Day, does that push when school ends? I don't know how to ask this question. Like, does that make it that people are in school longer in like the closer to summer?
this
No, not
before you answer that question, sorry, I did have another question. This is reminding me, and it was about the Juneteenth, the end. It was about the end of the school year, essentially. And I was
yep.
wondering if there's any significance of the Juneteenth holiday being like people wanting to end then, or if it's more just timing wise of where Juneteenth happens to fall. And so looking at that, because I remember not too long ago in the past, I think Portland ended on June 21st or 22nd after some snow days. So there is historical precedent for going a bit longer. So I was just curious about that. And I think that ties to board member Ali's question about like how far do we get pushed?
Yep. Um, so again, I think the Labor Day, the falling on that September 7th creates a little bit of an optical illusion in the calendar. This is really not very different at all from how our calendar was this year, our 2025 start. So this year, the first day of teachers coming back was on August 25th. So the current proposal right now for the coming year is for it to be August 24th or 25th. It could be either. So it's almost the same, give or take a day. The start date right now proposed for students is August 31st, which just happens to be the start of that next week. And this year it was on the 2nd of September because Labor Day was on the 1st of September. And so the 2nd of September was a Tuesday. So it's quite close to being how it was. The proposal for the coming year is very close to how it actually happened in 2025. I think it just looks and feels different because Labor Day then doesn't show up until the 7th. So it doesn't have a major impact on the end of the year. What has the bigger impact on the end of the year is the holidays and the snow days. So just to skip forward to the end of the year for a second, you'll see, so Juneteenth is on the 19th of June, but because that's a Saturday, it would be recognized on the 18th. And yes, this year's calendar actually has the teachers dipping into sort of after that weekend because we couldn't figure out a way around that. And there's no rule, there's no reason why we couldn't continue school after that Juneteenth holiday weekend. It's possible. It's just a preference that a lot of people have, and that was one of the themes that came out in the survey, was that people would love it if we could be done by then. But there's absolutely no rule that says we must be done by then. So if we want more flexibility, that is one of the places to find it, is at the end of the year.
Chair Lentz.
I will just say from those years when we did go that late, we just heard from a lot of families that it really started to impact summer camps and programs, and that families were having to choose whether to finish the school year or to start them in the camp. Um, and so I think that that is kind of the impetus that trying to end before that like 20th day of June. But I also, I think that summer camps have changed as well in the last couple of years. Like I've seen definitely, rec has definitely decreased the amount of weeks and other programs. So I don't know if that is worth maybe trying to see if we can collect any information on, the summer camps like Rec, Ripple Effect, Catcha, the ones that Breakwater that a lot of folks use to see kind of where that flexibility, like how much flexibility is really there in that week, or if there's already camps that are starting that week, maybe then that gives us information that we try to, get to before Juneteenth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rec folks have generally been kind of adapting to what we do. But you're right, they've had fewer days in the last couple of years in any event, just due to staffing challenges. But we could check with some of the other programs as well. So would it be helpful if I just kind of go back to the beginning and quickly walk through what's here?
Um, sure. Yeah, I guess my question was going to be what would you like from us?
Yeah, let me just quickly show folks how it's structured. So again, first week, I think we've talked through. 8:31 is the proposed start for students, with 8:91 being the proposed start for pre-K and K. This year we did that. We just had 1 day apart for the pre-K and K students, and it's intended just to be a way that they can start not in the full scrum of all the other students on the first day. And it used to be that it was a 2 day difference, but we felt like that was a little too much. And so this year we just did the one, and that seemed to work fine. And then, so one of the question points that we'll want to come back and talk about is, the teacher start day being the 24th or the 25th. And accordingly, then whether the August 28th is a teacher work day or not. And then another question mark is in green here, September 4th. So that's for discussion, whether we want to make that a day off as it's currently slated to be, or if we want to turn that back into a student day, and then that would free up a day elsewhere in the calendar. I'm just noting that we've got Yom Kippur there still. And then in yellow are the other, in general, those are holidays. It is traditional here to take that Wednesday as a part of the break for students and teachers, so that's still recognized there. You'll see the winter break starts on a Wednesday, so the way this is currently designed, Monday, Tuesday would still be student days. So if folks wanted to do anything with that, we would need to talk that through. And then there's your February break, the Eid holiday. This we're proposing to treat like a kind of like a snow day announcement. It's possible that it could fall a day earlier, potentially, maybe a day later. That is determined based on the religious leaders seeing it's a sighting of the moon. And so it tends to, in my experience, I think tends to fall pretty well on, the prediction usually tends to be right. But we would make the announcement ultimately at the time around that. We have moved our PD day again from an earlier version of the calendar that I had posted for you all, which it was supposed to be in late January. We moved it back again to March, which is how we've got it this year. And then we further moved it to March 19th, which aligns us with our paths, some of our path sending districts. And then our April break is here. I've just marked the Friday before the break in green in case folks are interested in potentially changing the September 4th, the Friday before Labor Day. If people would rather see that as a student day, then this could be one potential day to swap that for. Some people really liked the old tradition of having the Friday off before the spring break, but it's hard to do both of those things. And then here's the end of the school year. And again, this current version has 3 snow days built in, with an assumption that after 3 snow days, we would move to remote learning. And then the last teacher day is always the day after the last student day, however that ends up falling. And so in terms of what do we need from the committee? I think in general, just any questions, things that you would like us to go and get more information on, and then at least your initial thoughts on the start dates, the start date for teachers, and the September 4th question, whether we want to preserve that as a day off or if people would feel more comfortable with that being a student day.
I have a question, Dr. Warren, about the Eid holiday in March. For this current year's school calendar,
Mhm.
there's a plan to align it with the March PD day.
Yeah.
Why wasn't that the choice for this draft calendar?
Um, we back to that day. Uh, I think there were multiple there were multiple iterations of the calendar, and when we first did this, we were actually trying to move the PD day back into January. We were trying to get it closer to the end of the first semester. Um, and then we both got some feedback from folks through the survey that maybe that wasn't actually that helpful to them, at the secondary level in particular. And we also realized that we were trying to realign at least a couple of days with the paths group. And so we shifted to the 19th of March because that aligned with some of the paths districts. That said, it's possible we could actually go back to having it paired with the Eid holiday. So that's certainly something we could explore.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see if that would be beneficial or, detrimental to the overall goal of the calendar.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great point.
and then I would personally leave the decision about the August teacher day to the teachers, to the teachers union.
Yeah.
Um, and then um, yeah, the Friday before April break thing is, I think that's, one of those trade-offs in terms of the end of the school year. One thought I had, which I don't think would go over well with a lot of people, is having a student day on December 23rd. I know you mentioned that other districts are doing it, but there might be some pushback then. It's a difficult time of year to be trying to keep kids engaged in school.
Yeah.
But it's a thought if that
Yeah.
were a proposal.
Mhm.
Um, So those were my thoughts. Does anyone else have anything to share?
Can I just add something? And I think I agreed with you, Chair Maya, with to leave for the beginning of the school year, I mean, around August, to the teacher union, so they know exactly what is best for the teacher and when they have to go. So that's exactly what I'm lining to. So yeah, but I'm totally in favor for all the changes and how we want to move forward.
Oh, it looks like we have Dr.
Just brought
Opperman.
over Dr. Scallon, Dr.
Oh,
Opperman,
great.
and I think Jane Sawtell as well. Yep. Sorry, I couldn't see the the participant list before when I was presenting. Mm. Welcome.
Welcome. Any other thoughts for Dr. Warren as she's collecting notes for feedback? Yes, Dr. Opperman.
Thanks, Chair. I think the Friday before April vacation is not a must-have. There is no significance to it religiously or otherwise. And um, I mean, I think we should be very careful that we don't cut back on time for students here and there. You know, when if it's appropriate to a religious reason, that's an appropriate piece. But I mean, it's the piece of it is that people get out on the whatever trip they're going to go a day early. That they traditionally get snowed in anyway on that Friday, so it doesn't matter. So
I mean, just to be clear, if we did turn that into a non-student day, we would have to make that up someplace else in the calendar. So it's not a freebie, even if we did it. Other questions or things that you would like us to explore as we're doing, one last round of engagement with the collective bargaining partners and staff?
I do have a question. So can we just make sure, because when you mentioned then superintendent asked to have like a 2 years, so we don't have to review, every year. So I think I just want to understand if they're aligning with the idea, or you have to go, every year we have to go with the review of the calendar when they see, especially the Eid and all the other holidays are changing year to year, or we can just, moving forward and have some stable for 2 years, aligning with the vision and what the board and the superintendent is moving forward. Because I see that it's making more sense to have something already put in place for 2 years, so we don't have to come back for the calendar year to year. At least we are projecting something for the future, for 2 years on the line, and then we come back after 2 years. So I just want to make sure then it's something they can agree with that, or if they don't, what they have as options, as a trade-off for that.
I'm wondering procedurally if we would still need to approve the calendar the following year at that April
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I'm sure Dr. Scallon probably has some thoughts on this too. I mean, the goal behind this is to give folks as much advance notice as possible and to be able to plan well in advance. Um, Certainly in my conversations with Kevin Stilfen about doing this, from the perspective of the paths partners in the CTE program, he feels like it would be really helpful to have that advance notice. And I think for our families and our staff, it would be nice to know in advance. That's not to say though the that the board couldn't make amendments if necessary, if something happened in the interim that changed that need, or the way it was structured. And maybe we would want to reaffirm the calendar each year or something, but I don't think we would wait 2 years, right? Every year we would then be a year ahead. So we would always be looking at probably reviewing the coming year's calendar, but then approving the following year's calendar. So there'd always be something in front of the board. But Dr. Scallon, you were the one with the foresight to suggest this. So are there other thoughts you have?
No, I mean, I think back to the conversation we had around Eid and Yom Kippur. And one of the questions was, what would this look like a year from now? And how does this play out? And so I think that it just helps from a planning purpose as well, not just for the families, but also just to look at policy and how it plays out, and allows folks to think about, right? So that we have less people trying to buy, tickets 2 days before a spring break because it's cheaper than they can actually forecast out, and just preview more of what's coming, to hopefully help with attendance around those days right before and after breaks as well.
I think this has really been very thorough and well thought out, Dr. Warren. I appreciate all the work you've done on it. It's clear that you've done a lot of work to get it to this point, and so it's the fact that we don't have a lot of questions, I think, is speaking to that. So thank you. Um, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Ali and Bondo. All in favor, show your hands. Okay, great. The meeting is adjourned at 6:53 p.m. Just a reminder that we have committee meetings again starting at 7:30 p.m. So we'll see you there. Thank you.